Hi, John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. Welcome to this channel, and I hope you're doing well. So, we have kind of a civil war going on in Europe, just on a very low-key basis. And what is the reason? Well, of course, President Donald Trump is not letting off on the acquisition of Greenland. So we have a post on X from Reuters which states that EU leaders will rethink ties with the US at an emergency summit today after Donald Trump's threat of tariffs and even military action to acquire Greenland. So the EU leaders are going to get together and discuss what? What are they going to do? Are they going to cut the US off from SWIFT? Are they going to freeze the US assets? Are they going to isolate Russia? Isolate the United States? So, anyway, if they were to do knee-jerk reactions like they did to Russia, then those would be kind of the things that, freeze assets, cut off from banking, SWIFT, taking assets, stopping all diplomatic ties. There could be a wide range of activities that EU leaders can do, but basically their hands are tied. So first we'll take a look at the UK's response. So here we have Keir Starmer, who's trying to explain why the UK really isn't too opposed to the US just going in and taking Greenland. So he's focusing everyone's attention on the danger of Russia to the Arctic. Even though Russia is already in the Arctic, it has more territory in the Arctic than all other countries combined. So why would Russia cross the Atlantic Ocean and take this big hunk of ice to get to the Arctic if it's already in the Arctic? So some really lame stuff, considering that they've gone through all these hoops to try to justify the United States taking of Greenland and the lack of respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. So here's Keir Starmer. He's going to tell us what's really important in this whole matter.
Because last night the threat of tariffs was dropped. That is a good thing. And we can now get on with the hard yards of negotiating a better security arrangement for the Arctic.
So here we go. We're going to create a security arrangement for the Arctic to keep Russia out of the Arctic, even though Russia is already in the Arctic. So what are they talking about? What is all this, contortions, verbal twisting going on to tell us that Russia's going to go to the Arctic and take it when they're already in the Arctic? So, and we even have Denmark, saying we just want to be friends with the US and work really well with them. And, they're not giving this big pushback that they could give. So here is the response from a Denmark minister here on Vice News YouTube channel. It's one of these shorts. So here we go.
It's not helpful when you have a president that threatens us. We are not used to being threatened by our strong allies. That's unacceptable. What do you think?
So, we don't like to be threatened. Well, maybe you would like to do a little stronger response to that. We're going to put all of our available soldiers on Greenland, and we're going to push you out of the base that we let you use, and you will never come back. How about that? So, no, they're not talking about that at all. It's just like another day, business as usual. And so, actually, the Belgium Prime Minister has been really the most insightful and most outspoken critic of the United States. And so Here is his comments at Davos.
Where it has to decide. Until now, we tried to appease the new president in the White House. We were very lenient, also with the tariffs. We were lenient, hoping to get his support for the Ukraine war. We were in a very bad position at the moment. We're dependent on the United States, so we chose to be lenient. But now, so many red lines are being crossed that you have the choice between your self-respect. Being a happy vassal is one thing. Being a miserable slave is something else. If you back down now, you're going to lose your dignity.
Prime Minister.
So there you go with that. I think probably the strongest statement to the moment, very insightful. And here we have Jean-Claude Juncker. I don't know how you pronounce that, but anyway, he was the ex-EU Commission leader, and he is telling everyone that to use all tools available to support Denmark and Greenland. Now, will his comments fall on deaf ears in the UK and in other parts of Europe? I don't know, but anyway, here's his comment.
One thing is remaining sure. If a NATO ally attacks or threatens another NATO ally, this is inaugurating a process at the end of which we could witness a breakdown of NATO. Is something impossible.
So there we go. He also comments about the breakdown that's taking place within Europe. This is basically kind of a civil war in a way. Just right now a war of words, but it's heading in that direction. And we have Merz saying he will defend Greenland, even though Germany pulled their troops out of Greenland. They didn't have their winter jacket. They forgot their winter boots. They forgot their snow shovel. They came up with all these excuses why Germany had to leave Greenland, but basically he caved, and now he's just going to give this kind of lame generic, we're going to defend Greenland. This is not allowable. But of course, he's already caved. He pulled his troops out of Greenland. So, well, I'm not really even going to play his comments, but he says, we will defend Greenland at any cost. So why did he pull the German troops out of Greenland? Quite ridiculous. And here we have the situation with Europe. And so this is from 1 year ago. No, sorry. This is from a few days ago. And it states, fears grow over Europe's soaring dependence on U.S. gas imports. So now that the European countries are so dependent on the U.S. LNG, then it's very difficult for them to, say, we're going to cut off all relationship with the United States. There still is the possibility of going back to the Nord Stream pipeline, but that would take time to get up and running. Of course, between Russia and the United States, Europe will always choose the United States because there are other dependencies that Europe has on the U.S. So again, I'm going back to this whole question, the EU leaders, what are they going to do? They're going to make a strong statement. We support the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Greenland and Denmark. But in the end, their hands are basically tied. They've done that to themselves. And this whole situation is quite messy. You can imagine a divorce between a couple, and they own a business together, they own a home together, they own property together, they have bank accounts together, and then they tried to separate off all these possessions and everything. That's quite difficult. But let's say, you're going to have a divorce and then realize you're just a child. You're not even part of the marriage. The marriage is basically, mommy and daddy, and mommy and daddy is basically the U.S. and the U.S. interests. So, and you've lowered yourself to this level over years of just increasing dependency on the United States for everything, for trade, for LNG, for security. So what are you going to do? And so taking a look at the Nord Stream pipeline, we have this statement from October 2024 in which the permanent mission of France to the United Nations was scolding Russia for saying asking why the investigation into the Nord Stream pipeline explosion has lacked transparency and any urgency. Well, now in 2026, with Europe so dependent on the United States, they may want to push this investigation a little bit faster and get to the bottom of who was really behind this explosion. I'm sure many nations already know who was behind it, so it shouldn't take too much to figure out who was responsible for the Nord Stream explosion of Nord Stream 1 and 2. So, getting back to this meeting, the EU leaders meeting, what are they going to do? I mean, they could be adventurous and say we'll cut off all political ties, all economic ties. We will stop receiving LNG and we'll use bicycles if we have to. But they're all, the European countries put the United States as an all-in-one basket. So all their eggs are there. All their, everything is there. Their money, their eggs, their ticket home, to after they try to sell these eggs. So, and the United States is giving them the eggs and then collecting tariffs from the sale of the eggs. So, the European leaders are just basically have put themselves in a corner, and now they're starting to see the consequences of it. So, in a part, they brought this on to themselves, and they say they don't like this neo-colonial behavior from the United States, but these are all colonial powers. The United States was part of the British colonies, so the United States learned this from the best. Now it's applying the same lessons, and Europe is starting to squawk and to squeal. So I don't see a way out from Europe unless they really cut deep, and many of the European countries with their debt problems are really stuck because they need to keep their economy going, to keep paying the bills and keeping the lights on, and to keep their debt balance as low as possible. And if they cut off their relationship with the United States, their debt will skyrocket, and then they will go insolvent. And of course, that would mean that all these leaders would lose their jobs. So, just as a face-saving measure and to keep themselves in power, they will find a backdoor for their relationship with the United States, and they will smooth everything over, and in a month or two we won't even hear about Greenland, possibly. But if they decide to escalate, then of course they always have the option of getting gas from their eastern neighbor, Russia, and that could help them immensely because this would be cheaper gas, and with this they could get their industries going, and they could do much better economically. They could work out the issues with their Mercosur trade agreement and get that moved quickly. And of course, they could get help from China and have a bigger market for their goods, China said they were willing to work with countries. They want a win-win relationship. And Europe is very needy right now. So Europe could turn towards Russia and China, but like I say, they've already painted themselves into a corner with rhetoric and with their economic trade agreements and with their security ties. So I don't see how Europe extricates itself from this situation without eventually simply accepting this acquisition of Greenland by the United States. So this is my report, and I said I would keep it short, but anyway, I'm sorry it's a little longer than I thought. But anyway, I wish you all well, and thank you for joining me today. If you like this video, hit the like button, share, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you back in future reports. Take care. Bye-bye.